It's here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table. Welcome back to The Girls' Table, a podcast where founders, careers, and investors share their stories. My name is Alana Dickman. I am a partner at Redbeard Ventures, the founder of The Girls' Table, and also your host of this podcast. Today, I'm joined by Fernando Gouveia, the founding partner of Compa Ventures. Fernando is an ex-founder who has been working in crypto since 2013. He's built many products from the ground up and have been used by more than 20 million people in over 100 countries. Before starting Compa, Fernando was actually the CEO and founder of Clever Credit, a company that helps Shopify merchants offer branded credit cards to their customers for free. He was also director of business development of Plug and Play, a tech center where he ran their accelerator and helped over 250 startups from 20 plus countries expand into Silicon Valley. While at Plug and Play, he also founded a digital media accelerator with Grupo Abril, Brazil's largest media company. Fernando, thanks so much for coming on The Girls' Table today. Welcome.
An honor to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And we've known each other a while throughout the LA kind of tech scene. So stoked to have you on and share your story. I'm going to bring it all the way back to the beginning because you actually grew up and lived abroad and then left Brazil at the age of 6. And then you moved to a new country every 3 to 4 years. So what was the reason behind all this moving and what was it like growing up?
Yeah, so looking back on it, it was a great time. So I'm originally from Brazil, like you mentioned, and we moved because my father at the time was working for like a supermarket chain and he was part of the expansion team. So anytime they launched in a new country every 3 to 4 years, they would ship my family off. So when I left Brazil, we moved to Mexico. From Mexico, we went to Greece. From Greece, went to Taiwan. From there, went to China. And then I ended up in the US and my parents continued that route.
Wow. So what type of schools did you go to? Were they for international students or were you kind of just thrown into the fire when you were in Taiwan and when you were in Greece?
Yeah, so they made the smart decision to put us in international schools since the first time we left Brazil. And that was always a mix of like American schooling, sometimes it was European schooling style mixed into it. But thankfully, like English was always the main language spoken. But of course, I got the chance to learn some of the other languages as well.
So how many languages do you know right now?
So at the peak, it was 5. So it was Portuguese, Spanish, English, French, Mandarin, and Greek. But since I, graduated from college, don't travel as much in those countries, don't practice it. Now it's only 3, Portuguese, Spanish, and English that I can speak fluently.
Wow. That's actually insane. I'm also terrible at languages, so I give you props for knowing even more than English. But how do you think this experience shaped your perspective, both personally and professionally?
Well, I'd say on the personal side, I mean, you move to these countries, some of them have like extreme poverty, some of them you see like super high-tech cities. And I'd say the main thing is that you learn that we're all not so different, right? We all have 24 hours in our day. We all have insecurities. We all have hopes and wishes. And so, just to try to treat people with respect and empathy and know that we're all just trying to do our best.
Mm-hmm. And then what about professionally? And then also, I just want to add, like, you're moving around so much. Do you still have like these childhood friends? I mean, you were moving every 3 to 4 years. What was that like?
Yeah, so I definitely grew up on the internet back then. We weren't here in the US, I guess people used AOL, but me and my international peeps, we were all about MSN and some of those very early like social network type of chats. And yeah, so I mean, I definitely kept in touch with them. Then of course, when WhatsApp came by, and then now that I have the opportunity to travel for work, when I go to some of these countries, I try to meet up with friends, some of them that I haven't seen for decades.
Yeah, my family and my parents actually still use AOL, so that was definitely big here. I still have my AOL account. And then MSN, I'd go on and I'd actually play spades all the time. That was like my game. So I had both, but that was definitely big. So you're in school, you're traveling around, you're going to all these different countries, and then you were actually the first person in your family to attend university. So did you always want to go to college? Did your parents always kind of pressure you and tell you that you should go? Or was this just something that you always wanted to do?
So, I mean, I grew up on the American schooling system, right? Attending all these international schools. And so I knew I was gonna, well, at least I wanted to come to the US. And when I was in high school, I went to high school in Taiwan. It was very academically driven. All my friends, they were very, very smart. And so I was also kind of pushed. I didn't even know it was a choice to not do university at all. I just figured that was the next step I have to take to then go get a new job and stuff like that. And the coincidence was that my soccer coach was also my university counselor. And so he was kind of pushing me to go to universities in the US that had good soccer programs for the potential to maybe go play there. And a lot of those schools are based in the Bay Area. And so I took a trip my junior year, met some of the schools, and one of them ended up being Santa Clara University, which is right at the heart of Silicon Valley. And I just love the place there. I love the people I met, and that's where I ultimately went.
And did you ultimately, at the end of the day, have a goal of getting into venture capital and starting your own fund? Or what did you always want to be when you grew up and when you first went to college?
So I did not plan on being a venture capitalist. Little did I know, I didn't even know entrepreneurship really existed, especially on the internet. I was always really into like starting businesses. I knew I wanted to start a business eventually, but I didn't think it could be something that was purely online. And so I studied finance, international business, and I did a minor in entrepreneurship. And then from there, just went on.
Wow. So you graduated actually during the financial crisis, and then you also needed a visa in order to stay in the US. So how was finding a job, nonetheless, now finding a job that would have to spend money in order to sponsor your visa during that time?
Yeah, that was a brutal time. It was probably like the most stressful time of my life. We were in the thick of it with the financial crisis. And what a lot of Americans don't know is that there's this pendulum that swings for us where, let's say, if the economy is not doing so well, like when I graduated, no one wants to hire international people because there's the workload of, paperwork and all these things, getting lawyers and immigration counselors to prepare everything for that. And we have to make as much or more as an American in that same role. But on the other hand, when times are booming and the economy is doing well, a lot of companies are offering jobs to international people, and there's a quota of how many of those individuals can actually get the visa. And so you go through that whole process, and finally it's a flip of a coin whether you can stay or not. And so that was really hard. I didn't want to fail my family. I had a lot of pressure about them being able to give me the education I had. And I had also met someone I really thought I could spend the rest of my life with. She's ultimately my wife and the mother of my children now. I didn't want to leave her. So there was a lot of pressure there. I must have interviewed with almost 80 companies. Interviews would go great. And then when I was like, hey, I also need sponsorship, they would either reject me or ghost me. So that was pretty brutal. And then I told myself, if by July 15th, 2010, I can't get a job, I'm going to have to just leave the country, right? My visa wouldn't allow me to stay. And the last interview I did, which was at Plug and Play, where I ultimately started working, I had my last interview with the CEO July 8th, which was a Thursday. By then I had sold all of my stuff. The last thing I had to sell was my car. I had my suitcases in my car. And he told me he was offering me the job. And I told him, I'm so excited. I want to join this company. I want to do everything I have to do. I don't really know what's going to happen with my life. I was prepared to leave a week from now. Can I have like a few extra days to just sort out my life, figure out where I'm going to live and, how I'm going to get to work and things like that? And, he looks at me, he goes, yeah, by the way, it was a Thursday. He goes, I think you can do both things at the same time. I'll see you on Monday.
Oh my God.
And so that was the start of my journey. Yeah.
That is crazy. And also I feel like timing is everything. So that's pretty insane.
For sure.
So we talked a little bit about it in your bio, but what was your main role at Plug and Play? And what were you really helping these startups with?
For sure. So you need to look back, this was like 2010 was when social media and kind of like news coming straight from the people was becoming more and more popular. And a lot of international founders, they'd heard of this magical place called Silicon Valley. They had to go visit it and, kind of absorb some of that energy. And they would arrive at SFO and everything was happening behind closed doors. right? So like they didn't really get that magic besides visiting Stanford maybe. And at Plug and Play was kind of like this big office space. It was a hybrid of a VC and like eventually an accelerator. And what I was hired to do was figure out how to bring more of these international startups to stay with us, to eventually invest in them or have them, rent out our office space. And what I started noticing was that a lot of governments wanted to build the Silicon Valley of Slovakia or Chile or New Zealand. And what my team and I ended up building out was an accelerator. It was 3 months where I would take, let's say, 3 to 4 VCs with me to some of these countries. We'd select some startups. The government would pay for the startups to come. So they would spend 3 months with us, all expenses paid. They wouldn't have to give us equity. We'd work closely with them. And at the end of those 3 months, if everything worked out, if they got funding or got a key partner or decided to stay, then we would invest in them. We would bring in other VCs to co-invest with us. And then the country would have a success story of a company that came to Silicon Valley. Now, if the company went back to the home country, they would take everything they learned back home. And so that was something that really resonated with a lot of governments. And so I ended up partnering with almost 30 different countries. And I was the guy that would take all these trips, take the VCs with me, do the Shark Tank style demo days, or pitch sessions. And then I was the guy that would basically take care of the companies for the 3 months and help them decide whether they were going to stay or not. So
awesome first job. I just want to say, like, going from, hey, I'm going to have to go back home, can't stay in the country, leaving my girl, now wife, to
yep.
I have this dope job where I'm traveling around the world and doing Shark Tank style with all these startups and helping them really build the next Silicon Valley is awesome.
Yeah.
Such a cool.
Yeah. That was fun. At the time, I didn't really understood what I was getting into, but it was the best experience because I was constantly getting pushed out of my comfort zone, and I could mentor and shadow these incredible people that I could just absorb everything they were willing to share with me.
And is there anything you learned during that experience of working from the ground up with these startups that you now look for in the founders that you ultimately decide to invest in?
It depends, right? If we're talking about like the earlier stages, I remember one of the VCs I travel with, he'd say, you got to look at the 3 T's. It's team, timing, traction, and TAM. And, focus on those 3 things. And at the end of the day, that you're investing in people, and you got to really like piggyback on their vision, but do the due diligence and check off everything to make sure that, the company's set to go where everyone is thinking they're going to go. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of lessons there from all sorts of people that I got to travel with.
Yeah, it sounds so cool. So then in 2013, you actually got into crypto. So you're having this experience. How long were you at Plug and Play? And then what ultimately led you to getting involved in crypto and deciding to kind of jump into that space?
Yeah, so I like to say it was good karma because I was trying to be a good friend. One of my colleagues at Plug and Play, he was hosting the Silicon Valley Bitcoin meetup. I think this started around 2012. And he would just ask me, hey, can you stay after work? Like, can you help me put out the chairs and put the pizza out, welcome the speakers and the guests? I was just trying to be a good friend, and I would just stay there listening to these people. And at the time, it was a very small community, and it was in Silicon Valley. So it was like some of the founders that have done incredibly well. And I would just hear these people talk about the potential for crypto and how it integrated economics and psychology and, social finance and things like that. And one day it clicked, and I said, wow, I have to go join a Bitcoin startup. And then one day I ran into one of the VCs that I knew from something I had done in Brazil. And I was thinking, what is this Brazilian VC doing at a Silicon Valley Bitcoin meetup in Sunnyvale? This is so random, right? So I ended up meeting with him, and he told me about how the company that I ultimately joined, called Zappo, was putting a team together, was founded by a very well-known and experienced entrepreneur called Wences Casares, who's known in the fintech scene and especially in South America. He's like, hey, we need someone who can do biz dev. Do you want to join us? I said, I don't care if I have to clean your toilets. I don't care what I need to do. I'm in. And from there was quite the journey, and I spent 6 years at Zappo.
Wow. I just love how you say, you're like, all you got to do is like help a friend. Next, you're investing in crypto. So
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
would you say is the main difference now between what the landscape was like back in 2012, I guess, and 2013?
Yeah. So when I really got into it was like around, let's say, middle of 2013. Um, Back then, I mean, obviously it was a much smaller community. At a lot of these events, at a lot of these meetups, people would meet face to face to buy and sell. There was no exchange. I mean, Coinbase was just getting ramped up. And the main thing I'd say was that there was this very like innocence and like feeling of hopefulness. Like we were thinking about like what's going to happen when crypto takes over the world. We wouldn't really think about like the nuances and the steps required to get there. Like I'd say crypto right now is in a very tactical battle where, you know, it's like you take small steps and incremental wins. Back then it was just more about dreaming like, oh, what the world is going to be like. And then of course, taking that first bull run, which was from like a couple $100 to 1,200 and telling all your friends and family to get in on it. And then to that, there was like a 2.5 year bear market. So, you know, all sorts of feelings that come with it.
I don't know if you ever played the game like HQ Trivia, but that was what I remember from like the bull market of crypto,
Yep.
where I'd go play this game and everybody's just like, buy crypto, buy Bitcoin, ETH. And it's just so funny because that's what I knew back then. And I like considered, but I didn't officially jump in until more like.
Yeah, a lot of things happened in like forums. So Reddit was a big place to get your news, or another one's called Bitcoin Talk. And any mention of Bitcoin in the media, whether it was a song or, you know, a news article, everyone would just get so hyped up. It was, you know, nowadays it's like, oh, BlackRock is filing for a Bitcoin ETF. Yeah, no big deal. Back then it was just like any small mention is like, oh my God, it's happening.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you joined Zappo, ultimately worked there for 6 years. What was your main role as biz dev there?
So Zappo originally was one of the first custodians, I'd say, for Bitcoin. You got to remember, back then there was no Ethereum, there were no smart contracts. It was a much simpler time, and Zappo was primarily trying to create an offshore account for everyone. So, you know, if you think about it, when countries collapse, or like when when currencies collapse, what I'm trying to say, let's say in Venezuela or Argentina, people transfer their money to their bank accounts in Spain or the US, but that's only the wealthiest, right? And we wanted to give a way for the middle and low income people to also be able to have access to these different currencies. So that was kind of like the initial goal of Zappo. And I was hired at first to do biz dev as a product lead for some of our core like financial products. So the first product I launched was a Bitcoin debit card in early 2014. After that, you know, getting insurance for our cold storage, and from there went on. But then it shifted to more of like a user acquisition, more like consumer focused stuff like games that paid users in crypto, or partnerships with social media companies. And I mean, I have so many stories for launching any of those the wildest ride.
And how did the company end up doing? Because this is, I mean, you think about, as you mentioned, like Venezuela, who basically currency is at zero, or Argentina, that I feel like people aren't talking about enough. That's hitting inflation numbers like crazy. So like, are you guys still alive? What ended up happening? Because this seems like an amazing use case if people knew about it back then.
Yeah, so Zappo is still alive. It's a private bank based out of Gibraltar. So they got all the licenses and everything to be based out of there. And they're really targeting, I believe, the countries that are kind of getting hit the hardest. And so it's, again, it's like that offshore, it's a digital offshore account for people in emerging markets. But back when I was at the company, it was kind of a little bit of a free for all. It was like getting market share from crypto native users, trying to get, you know, users that need bank accounts in Venezuela or South Africa or Malaysia. And so it's a little bit of everything. But yeah, they're still around.
Wow. So you were there for 6 years, and then COVID happened. And during the lockdowns, you ended up deciding to start your own startup called Clever Credit. So could you touch a little bit on this experience and what you ultimately decide to build?
Yeah. So ever since I was at Plug and Play that I was telling you about, I knew I wanted to start a company. right? I felt like that was the most noble thing you can do and exciting, and to be able to chase your dream. And one of the last things I did at Zappo was build out this rewards program. And I noticed that a lot of these other digital banks, they had rewards programs, but it was on a debit card. And so there was very limited margin and money you made from the card to actually power rewards programs. And so I started looking into credit cards, and I noticed that, especially the pandemic, a lot of the companies that did well, like retail stores, like big chain stores and airlines, it was thanks to their loyalty programs. If you think about like Delta Miles and the United Airlines and things like that. And so we also saw that everyone was starting to buy more online. So e-commerce was booming, but none of those smaller brands had access to the economics that come with a credit card program. And so I left Zappo along with a few of my colleagues from that company that were managed like the tech side of the card program. And I had a friend here in LA who's been building rewards programs for a long time. And we tried to launch a credit card for Shopify merchants for these smaller online shopping brands, and give them access to, have a branded card, have an app and things like that. And so that's what we set out to do initially.
And what ultimately ended up happening?
Yeah, so I learned the hard way how expensive credit cards are. If you think about it, a credit card is a loan linked to a card, right? So we initially had to finance that loan. So let's say I give you $1,000 credit limit on your card. You might only spend $10 of that a month, but that $1,000 comes out of my balance sheet initially and is locked away for as long as you're a card holder. And we didn't have the data to go out and raise debt. And so we had to finance it ourselves. On top of that, making a nice product, making it secure, getting all the banking licenses and partnerships to be able to issue cards. So the money I had to raise just kept growing and growing and growing. And I got to a point where I had to choose, okay, do I really want to go hard and try to be like the heroic founder that, almost kills the company, but somehow makes it on the other side? Or the more realistic thing that, we're probably not going to make it till the next funding round. And so what I decided to do was call my investors and say, hey, I want to return the rest of the money. I don't think we can make it unless I raise more money. And I can't raise more money because to raise that, I need data, which I can't get unless I have more money, right? This long loop. And so I decided to shut the company down, return a little bit of the money. And in that process, one of my investors, he said, hey, since you're not working on your startup anymore, you've always been my crypto guy. I'm thinking about starting a family office. I want it to be focused on crypto. Can you help me understand, what should this look like? Should it be a fund of funds? Should it be a standard family office? How should we structure it? And so I did a little bit of research, and ultimately I told him, hey, if you want to really have it be focused on crypto and at the earlier stages, we need to have it set up as a proper VC firm if we want to chase the best deals. So instead of me being an employee at your family office, why don't you be my LP anchor investor in my fund? And this is someone I had worked with for a long time. And so he agreed. And so then I had my anchor investor in my fund. That gave me the confidence to kind of go out and kind of polish up a thesis and go raise more money. And then that's basically what I did.
That's just a great story, going from, hey, I'm doing this startup, I raised capital, it's starting to fail, knowing yourself and being like, because most founders don't. They will bring it to the ground and be like, whatever, you guys gave me the money, let me test it out if it doesn't work. But I think knowing yourself enough to be like, you know what, this isn't going to work, and being able to give back some of that money to then eventually starting your own fund, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So how much money did you end up raising for your first fund? And is it just you at Compa Ventures?
Yeah, so it's just me. So it's set up as a solo GP, at least for now. I ended up raising 20 million for Fund 1. It's mostly focused on early stage crypto. So it's crypto agnostic, investing in everything from very technical infrastructure projects to more consumer friendly stuff. Really piggybacking on my experience from Zappo and from Plug and Play and things that I know that I understand well. And yeah, just running it solo for now.
That's so amazing. And before we really dive into your thesis and some companies, is there any advice you have? I know a lot of like emerging GPs who really want to go out, raise their own fund. You made it sound easy. You're like, I met this guy, he was my anchor, then I raised 20 million. But is there any advice that you actually have for somebody looking to go out and raise their own fund?
For sure. Well, right now it's a pretty hard time to raise a fund, especially a fund one. So now, more important than ever, it's about having your angle, right? So what my angle was that I leveraged my experience at Zappo, all the people I knew from running the biz dev teams. And so when I was fundraising, I understood, or from talking to a few of my old friends, I understood that there's a lot of people that maybe in the media, they're seen as Bitcoin maximalists and, they love Bitcoin, but they understand that crypto at this point is much bigger than that. And, but they maybe don't want to lose that public perception. And so I kind of went and took advantage of that in some ways to say, hey, why don't you give me some of your capital and I'm going to help you deploy it across the industry. And you can continue to be that person, but you can still kind of capture the returns that are happening on some of these other big chains or some of the new initiatives that are happening in crypto. And so it worked with one, then it worked with two. Then I started kind of recreating that same model. And that's how I kind of got to what I'd say is it's a pretty nice size for a fund one. I closed it and I got to work starting April of 2022. So I've been fundraising for about a year or so. And of course, like end of 2021 was crazy and there was a little bit of mania there. So obviously taking advantage of that. But anyways, the point for new managers is find your angle, find where you're different. I'd say you're better off picking a niche area, whether it's a geography or a vertical or something that makes you different from somebody else, from everybody else. And not try to be just a generalist fund and doing what everyone does, because then you can't really stand out.
Mm-hmm. So what's your main thesis for Compa Ventures, and what excites you the most about this space today?
Yeah, so with Compa, so like I said, it's a $20 million fund focused primarily on seed stage companies. It's crypto agnostic, so looking at everything across crypto. And like I said, primarily things that I understand that I've been a part of that I can help the founders either with recruiting or product development or partnerships and so on. And I look at a lot of the stack being built on top of Ethereum, which, if you compare it to when I started, it was a lot about branching out into other chains and looking for, bigger upside. But I really thought that a lot of things would concentrate in this one chain. So I've been focused on that quite a lot. Lately, what I've been looking at is like, considering that we're in a bear market, who knows what's going to happen with the U.S. economy? Even though I think the recession's coming, but the media is not really talking about that. I kind of split it into two buckets. So on the infrastructure side, I look at more like these very crypto native things that, let's say, are leveraging on-chain data or tokens or things that are getting built that are not possible without having blockchains. But on the consumer side, it's more about these companies that are leveraging, let's say, the best practices of Web2 or how things have been done in the internet for the past couple decades, but are adding a layer of Web3. And that can apply to everything from, games that are using NFTs as gaming assets, or companies that are building affiliate or referral programs for both off-chain, the way that things have been done, but also new ways to track usage across some of these blockchains. I'd say those two that I'm really focused on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're definitely in line. That's why we have some similar companies that we've looked at and diligence. What do you think it's going to take to get out of this bear market in crypto?
Oh, it's tough because now we're at the mercy of like the U.S. economy and how things go, right? Because it's considered a risk asset and everything's going to kind of follow that, I'd say, with the caveat that, if we do get that Bitcoin ETF, things could start pumping from there. When it comes to actual usage for some of these consumer-focused products, I think from the infrastructure side, we're at a much better place than we've ever been. But on the consumer side, I really think what it's going to take is things that are familiar to non-crypto native users. You can't just push everyone to, let's say, go to layer 2 and buy, some tokens to be able to do certain, right? We have to try to keep things simple. So I think on the consumer side is going to be something that's very familiar, but where that's going to come from is hard to say because crypto is constantly changing. It's like the flavor of the month, what's interesting and what's not.
Yeah, we've looked a lot at, you kind of mentioned gaming, but that interoperability of gaming assets. And we feel like gaming, if one of the big companies come into the space and say, hey, now you can actually bring your games across chain and your sword that you got in the game or your special character, there's only going to be a certain amount. And then you could actually go ahead and sell it in our marketplace and actually get value for the items that you receive. We think that that's going to be huge for this space. Particularly.
And it's coming for sure. So I just tweeted this yesterday. Like for some reason, I've been seeing a lot of gaming companies recently, and these are all like veteran gaming executives that are building, high quality games using Unreal Engine 5. We have some of the tools that now, you can manage some of these economies. Like how many of these NFTs are available? How many are getting bought or sold? And what's the pricing, right? Like the data behind it to understand how to kind of balance out these economies. And then you have like access to apps that kind of bypass the app stores, kind of like what FriendTech has done for anyone listening that knows crypto. There is now a way to be able to get access and trade tokens without going to the app store versus obviously being like a desktop game. And
if you want to buy mine, it's at Alana. I give you no value whatsoever and you probably shouldn't buy it, but that's really, I do believe in decentralized social going into that, but I don't think FriendTech's going to be the way to do it. I think it's more of ownership of your followers, being able to bring them across, actually understanding them and monetizing off of them. But
I've been following that space fully from the rally coins to the DSOCs. Now it's FriendTech, and they've done some very novel ways, but I think it's just being propped by crypto Twitter, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess like if you must receive like as much as me, like so many companies reaching out, they're trying to raise capital, at least in this space, I personally believe it's a lot more of a builder's market. But what is your process? Like you're a solo GP, you're the one doing the investment committee and ultimately making the decision. Like how do you decide when to actually pull the trigger and make an investment?
Yeah, so I have to try to streamline the process as much as possible. And of course, I'm still learning as well, right? You got to remember, I'm a year into my first fund. This whole VC thing is kind of novel besides obviously my plug and play experience. In terms of process, what I try to do is I only try to take calls with teams that have a high chance of, if it's like definitely a hell yes, otherwise I don't take those calls. So to really focus the time I spend with founders are on teams that have a good chance of investing. And then, I have a long list that keeps improving based on my experience on the due diligence process that I have to take. And I leverage either individuals, either scouts or partners that have experience in those spaces that can help me understand the companies, or do due diligence on some of the teams. I try to write a nice rejection email to everyone that I pass on, just because I've been in their shoes in the past and I understand how much it sucks to get ghosted or not get feedback. So I also spend some time on doing that. And then thankfully, because it is a bear market, things are a little bit slower. VCs have a little more time to do their due diligence and decide. But I'm probably doing about an investment a month, I'd say, and that seems to be ample time to really make some of the decisions that I need.
Yeah, we're very in line with a lot of things that you say. And I'd say if you go back to when we started our fund in February of 2022, and it was like a crazy market. It's like you get the allocation, you're like, you need to make a decision, and then you make a decision, and they're like, actually, your allocation's cut in half. And it's like, okay, that's great. But now it's like, it's definitely a longer process. I mean, we're taking probably more time than necessary to speak to everybody and anybody, speak to customers, speak to other venture capitalists, speak to recommendations, whatever it takes to really get over the line, especially in this market, and to fully understand where they're going and if they are really giving value to those partnerships or those customers that they have.
For sure. The other part of it is also because part of my fund is like a liquid token, so I can trade some of these higher market cap tokens. depending on where the market is, it kind of trails the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum, obviously, which comes from trailing the, S&P 500 and things like that. Sometimes you have a little bit of a difference between the valuations of startups and where these tokens sit. So the valuations usually lag. So let's say, for example, when I first started the fund, April 2022, valuations were very high compared to where the tokens were because we were kind of coming down, and then we had FTX. And so on those times, I tend to focus more on the liquid fund. And then as things start coming up, like I feel like right now there's extremely high quality companies, and the valuations are like way lower than they were even 6 months ago, a year ago, and so on. And so deciding, okay, based on where the market is, where the quality of companies I see, I can focus on one or the other. I don't feel the need to constantly be deploying. And so I take advantage of that.
Do you eventually want to bring somebody on your team to help it? I think that's just thinking about, we're a 25 million fund. Like, it's crazy to think that you're doing it all kind of by yourself, apart from those partners that you have and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. But it is kind of like a marriage. I went to the experience of getting co-founders from my startup, and it has to be someone beyond being a domain expert in their field. You have to get along with them. You have to respect their way of working and how they do things. And you have to kind of be same high quality or above of how you perform. But then also have someone who's different, has a different perspective and can push back on some of your ideas. So you're constantly refining your thesis and the due diligence process and things like that. So I'm on the lookout. I'm not in a hurry yet, just because right now it's kind of like I'm trying to learn I try to operate my fund like a startup, trying to go lean as much as possible. And as I feel like I'm so overwhelmed by the inbound of deal flow that I'm getting, then I can start kind of expanding the team from there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, I want to end it with, what's the most valuable piece of advice or insight you've received in your career that you want to share with the listeners today?
Ooh, I would say, if I had to pick one, I would say you don't owe anything to anyone. Like, this is your life. Don't let anyone try to get you to do something you don't want to do. Or, if you're intimidated by someone or you're nervous about what people are going to think about you, forget about all that. You don't owe anything to them. Just do you. Just live in the present. Live your life. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you're okay with yourself. And that kind of pushes you to be okay with going outside your boundaries and testing new things.
Awesome, Fernando. I love that. Yeah. For everybody listening, thanks so much for joining. Make sure to like, follow, and Fernando, where else can people follow along on your journey? Or if they want to get in touch with you, where could they reach you?
I'm on Twitter, or X, I guess we call it now.
I still call it Twitter.
Yeah. So I'm Fern_Gouveia, or the other best place is Compa, is COMPA.xyz. That's the website of my fund. And yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Idea about everything you're doing.
All right. Thanks a lot.